Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Underneath the Vanity. I'm Mama Reeves, and today we are going to be going through Uncovered Truth, Episode 2, I Became My Own Worst Nightmare. Let me start at the beginning. When I got married, I was 22 and a half years old, and I married the man of my dreams, and I thought my life was going to be happily ever after from that point. And I was really excited. And I very soon found out that that's not reality. And my husband and I, as soon as we got married, we picked up and moved to a brand new city that we knew nobody in to help plant a church. And I didn't handle this transition very well. I love routine. I'm one of those people that thrives in having kind of the same day in and day out with maybe a little bit of variation. And this was completely redoing and erasing any routine that I had. So I became very irritable. I became very anxious, very stressed out very easily, and crying and getting upset over the littlest things. All these things that I kind of was like bothered by before, amplified to an extent that I was getting really worried. It was inhibiting me from having a normal, regular life. And as a couple of months continued by, my husband and I, our marriage got really strained. And we were still newlyweds. And I didn't know why. I just found myself getting very angry with him. And even if he did something minuscule to annoy me, it would go from, oh, that's annoying, to a complete me freaking out and exploding at him. There came a point when my husband's family came to visit. We were very excited to see them, and we had a great time. And my sister-in-laws, my two younger sister-in-laws, stayed with us because they wanted to overnight, and so they hung out in our living room. And unfortunately that night my husband and I got into a fight. We got into a verbal confrontation, and it got heated, and we tried to stay quiet. And of course our walls are pretty thin, and the older of the two sisters heard everything that we said. And I found that out the next day, and I was embarrassed beyond belief. And I was very frustrated and angry with myself. I would never want to intentionally make someone uncomfortable, but I did. And a couple of days later, my husband sat me down, and he says, "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. And I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid, and it's gonna hurt, but you need to hear this." And he looked at me and very kindly and very calmly said, "Sarah, you are verbally and emotionally abusive." My whole world stopped. I had no idea that I had crossed into that level of toxicity. I knew that what I was doing in the way that I was talking to my husband wasn't respectful or constructive. I didn't know I crossed over the line to abusive. And to hear that phrase in my head, verbally and emotionally abusive, my heart shattered for my husband and for myself. I couldn't think. To me, it was the equivalent of somebody saying that a family member had died. I remember I heard two voices in my heart as soon as this came to light in that night. The first one said, "You've done it now. You have gone too far this time in your sin. And God can redeem anybody, child molesters, thieves, anyone, but you crossed over your sin boundary line, and God can't save you from this, and He's not going to forgive you for this." And I remember as I was sobbing, and Matthew asked me, do you understand what I'm saying to you? And I confessed, because I realized as I was looking back that what I did was verbally and emotionally abusive 1,000%. And no matter what he said or what he didn't deserve an ounce of it. Nobody deserves verbal abuse, no matter what. And I take 100% responsibility and accountability for my actions, for my behavior, and for my words. And I still do to this day. Nothing was his fault. And as I continued to sob, I heard a second voice, very quiet, but filled with joy. A voice say, "That's my girl. You did it. You confessed it. You repent. You ask for forgiveness for this. I can work with that. I'm so proud of you." And I was almost infuriated to hear that, because I thought, God, why would he be loving on me right now? I'm the perpetrator. I'm not the victim. After that, everything seemed to turn from color in my life to black and white. I had a hard time eating. I had a hard time sleeping. Taking a shower, even a couple times a week, was like climbing a mountain for me. And it got to the point where I felt like my life was over. I ruined my husband's life, and because of that, I ruined mine. Because I love my husband dearly, and I would never intentionally try to hurt him. The enemy started placing thoughts into my head that I fantasized over. And those thoughts included ending my life. I saw images in my mind of me just overdosing on whatever pills were in the medicine cabinet, and just taking as many as I possibly could, and just not waking up, and setting my husband free from what I had done to him. Because I didn't want him to be with an abuser like me. And those thoughts came in and out. They terrified me, but I was very tempted to continue down that path, so I didn't say anything for a while. Because I didn't want help, but I realized at one point that I needed help. And I prayed, and I said, I need help. God, I need help. Very soon after that, an amazing woman who's also a Christian counselor came into my life. And she and I started talking, and I started to get better. But during that time, I became pregnant with my son, my first child. And I was so overjoyed and over the moon to be pregnant. But there was also a part of me that was bitter about it, because I knew I would not end my life if there was a child within me. I don't know if I would be here if I hadn't been pregnant during that time. And I honestly believe that the Lord brought my son into my womb when he did, because he knew that I would never harm myself, because there would be an innocent child involved. And I believe that God used my sweet little boy to save my life. So I went in and out of suicidal thoughts, even while I was pregnant, even though I knew deep down I would never do it because I was pregnant. And I had very bad depression. I ended up leaving my job because I was discriminated for being pregnant, which is a completely long story, and I'm not getting into that. But I ended up quitting my job because of that pregnancy discrimination, and I would spend my days in bed watching something to get my mind off of the branding I had put on myself, which was abuser. And I just, as excited as I was to be a mom, I also didn't want to be, because I had ruined my life. That's what I believed. I ruined my life. I became an abuser. I wish I could say everything just magically got all better, but it didn't. A few months later, as my pregnancy continued to progress, one of my best friends in the whole world had a family member commit suicide. And I was there with my friend in minutes after this person found out. And my husband and I were there, and we held this person. And we cried together, and we drove that person back to the city that they needed to be to see their family and to grieve. And God brought me there, and He showed me, if I were to end my life, how selfish of a decision that would have been, and how much damage, traumatic damage, I would permanently cause in so many people's lives. And it sobered me. It scared me straight. Since I have chosen to follow Jesus, I've realized how hard it is. How much struggle and pain I have been through, I never thought I would go through. But the pain and the suffering and the agony, God is shaping me into who I am today. He didn't create this pain. He didn't create this suffering, but He allowed it because He knew I would come out on the other end stronger, wiser, more refined in my faith, and have a story that can relate to so many people out there. And for anyone out there who thinks that I'm brainwashed, that I'm crazy, that I am off my rocker, I've never been more alive. If you are going through abuse, it is not healthy. It is not okay. And no matter what kind of abuse it is, you don't deserve it. But I am here to speak for the people who are the abusers. You are not a lost cause. You are not a horrible person. Your actions are toxic and unhealthy, but there is hope and help for you, just as much for anybody else in the world. If you know that you have been abusive in your past, that does not mean that you are going to be abusive for the rest of your life with every relationship. That's where Christ comes in. And by God's grace, the Lord has freed me from my verbal and emotionally abusive tendencies. It has been eradicated out of my marriage. It's been eradicated out of my body and out of my mind. And I have been delivered by Christ. And I am so grateful for that. And it could not have left me unless I had Jesus in my heart. There is hope for both the abuser and the victim. And take it from somebody who was the abuser. There is hope for you. So much hope. I want to finish this episode by giving a verse for both the victim of abuse and the abuser themselves. 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Let that sink in. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And if you're somebody who struggles with being abusive or having abusive-like tendencies, God's grace is more than sufficient. And it will cover you. It will eradicate the darkness out of you and change you into a person that you never thought you could become. This is where I'm going to end my episode today. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for listening. Blessings to you all, and I'll see you in the next episode.